Yeah, Hardened. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. I think we're good now. It's not completely in order, but it's an order of cost. Okay, so first order of business here. We're gonna go with body talents.
Okay.
We have to talk about tough.
Yeah, tough.
Tough. Dude, this is tough. It's actually not that tough. I'm thinking solid D tier. What about you?
D tier?
Yeah, I don't think it's that good.
Listen, I can tell like right off the bat from like right before we started that me and you were gonna disagree a lot on the one costs.
Yeah,
I think,
dude, it's wild.
In general, I feel like the one costs are phenomenal, and so I'm gonna put it like a solid A tier.
Really? You think it's
Yeah.
A? Why?
Well, so the thing is like I don't think that the talent itself has a lot of weight, but it's the fact that like you always have to have a filler, whether it's like a 2 cost in some builds or if it just happens to fit that last 1 point that you have and you haven't already spent 7 points across 2 trees, and then next thing you know you're just like, oh yeah, tough is there, like it's free, it's 1 cost, it's got 25 armor on it. Like I think it's just like, I don't think I'm gonna ever look at tough and say, okay, what build can I make around tough? It's like the other way around, like what do I have left over? And then it's like if tough is in that spot, then I just throw it in there.
And that's kind of what I'm getting at with it, is like you're never okay, for one thing, you're never going to base your build off of 1 cost anyway, so I guess I can throw that one out the window.
Yeah.
If I'm looking at fillers and I only have the 1 point left, obviously it's my only choice, so I'm going to pick it. But if I have 2 points, are you saying that I'm gonna pick tough over dexterity or tough over Wellspring? Well, that's kind of what I'm getting at. Yeah. So like,
I feel that. I respect it.
I don't think it's anywhere near A. If anything, like I will potentially give it a C, but like I'm thinking of what the value, because
that's funny because I was thinking I might potentially move it down to B. Like in my mind, I'm like, yeah, like so you were like trying to come up one, and I'm like maybe thinking about coming down. I think I'm gonna leave it at A for now, and then like we'll see, because that opinion could totally change in time for sure.
Yeah, we're gonna have to place these and like figure, is this better than this, like in a vacuum? Because like I don't really want to factor cost too much, but it's still like, you know, what builds can this go in? You know?
Yeah, it definitely matters, but you're right. I mean, you have to just look at like straight value.
Yeah, so for mine, I'm going to put it in C on mine. You can place yours whatever you want.
Yeah, I have it in A, sitting in A.
All right, and we'll I bet we'll come like to more of an equal discussion as the night goes on.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm looking at dexterity right here, and I actually think this one's A. Like, I think dexterity with the run speed and the levitation, and you got to think like, yeah, I think they're planning some sort of spring step nerf in some way, but dude, like, I think it's, if I remember correctly, its levitation cost actually got buffed plus the run speed. Now you can jump through windows. Like, this talent's really good. What do you think?
I couldn't agree more. I think dexterity is an insanely strong 2 cost. I think that I don't know if anybody's going to ever go out of their way to make a build around dexterity, but there's like a 0% opportunity where it's not good, right? Like it's never not going to be good. And the buffs that they did to it like dexterity was already good, but they made it like really good, like extra value. So yeah, dexterity for 2, that's really nice. I like it a lot.
Yeah, the way I see it is like it already made sense, and then they made it make even more sense, you know?
Yep.
And honestly, like though, like for chapter 1, like you say that no one ever built around dexterity, dude. I saw a whole bunch of people build spring step dexterity because like that was literally the chief complaint. Which, first of all, I don't really agree with the complaint, but that's a whole different topic. But like, dexterity is hella strong now, I feel like. Yeah, I'm leaving it an A.
Good. They took something good and made it better, and it's a relative cost increase. So it's I think it's nice.
Yeah, so I'll put it in A for now, and we'll come back to it. All right, I think we might disagree on this one. Wellspring.
Okay, so this is where I'm at right now. I'm actually really unsure, and I think Wellspring is going to be one of those talents that I need to feel, because on paper it just looks so good, but you have to go through the process of burning out your mana, and so that's kind of annoying. Not to say that it's not manageable, but you have to actively burn out your mana, wait for the refill, even though it does have a faster recharge, and then get your value out of it. And that's good for a damage mod. First of all, in terms of damage mods from Chapter 1, we have them all cut down 10%, which I think is great.
Beautiful.
Just for the damage mod meta. And yeah, I'm looking at Wellspring, and I think it looks really, really good. But something's telling me this is like a B tier section.
I was thinking it would probably be more around A, because what I'm thinking, like you mentioned the on paper thing, and I'm thinking like if I'm running Wellspring, and I see a fight in the distance, and I really want to third party this thing. Like, by the way, this is like in relation to Battle Royale. I just want to lay that out because I know we have like rumors of the new game mode, but we don't know what it is yet. So
exactly, yeah.
So forgot to mention that at the beginning, but in terms of BR, so Wellspring, I see this draining your mana all the way to 0, and I think a lot of people look at this as if like you're gonna do it in the middle of combat, and I see this as more like I see a fight, I'm levitating all of my mana out, getting that 0 mana, getting the damage buff for 6 seconds. That's a hell of a long time.
Yeah.
And then like I can prep that, I can recharge it up. I have about 5 more seconds to get this 20% damage out, and then if for some reason I find myself in a reset, I levitate it back out. I get another 6 seconds. Maybe I get a potion in, and then I'm back in with, again, 20%. So
I'm
like,
not gonna lie, I put it at A already too. It's just so it's so strong. And the other thing too is that like there's definitely going to be situations with a few of these talents where they're just like really, really strong on certain classes, and like Conduit Wellspring is like calling to me. Like you can literally like stand, like burn out your mana bar shooting at someone, and then when your mana bar refills, you burn out your mana bar again, but with more damage. Like it's like you're already using so much mana to like do what you need to do as Conduit, and I think like Wellspring is going to be a really good talent for that as well. So yeah, I already put it back up to A. Like something about me says it's like on the line, but if I have to make a hard choice, I'm putting it on A.
Dude, I have so many things to say about Conduit builds right now. Like,
yeah,
holy moly.
I still feel like we're still like lacking that bit of context in terms of class balance, but Conduit looks scary. And I think that's a fair way of putting it right now.
Yeah, okay, this is getting into this is getting into a little bit different territory. With the removal of Fervor, I see a little bit of hope, but I've also seen Dan Ogle's crossed out notes about cast speed, so I'm like, oh no.
we definitely know cast speed changes, or something's happening, but we don't really know what. And we don't know class rebounds too. Like you never know.
Yeah.
Conduit could get really, really hit hard, but we'll have to just see.
Yeah. All right, moving on. We got Vigor, 50 health at 3 talents. I'm thinking, obviously, I think it's better than Tough because of corrosion by itself. But I think 50 health itself just lends itself to so many other builds that Tough doesn't. So I was thinking to put it a tier higher and B on my list. What are your thoughts?
This is another one of those that I feel like it's really going to come down to me feeling out the game and like feeling out the TTK and just like having like a much better overall understanding of how the game is playing with these different talents. Right now, I mean, first of all, like I want to just get this out of the way. I'm a huge fan of like tanky builds. I almost always lead in that direction. So this one's calling to me, but standalone, like an extra 50 health is actually not very good. Like nothing
really.
I don't know, like it's good, but like Vigor was already kind of like a meme in Chapter 1, but it's good when you can pair it with things and when it makes sense.
Yeah.
And I genuinely think that this chapter's TTK is going to be a little bit better. It's not going to be so bursty. So this is another one of those ones that I'm floating on the line of B and C tier. Right now I have it sitting in C tier. I think it's going to be good. I think it's going to be usable. I think it's going to be viable, but it's not. I don't think it's going to be one of those talents that people go crazy after and throw in every single build. But we'll have to see. I mean, it is a 3 cost too. So there's a bit to spend there.
Yeah, there sure is. I'm thinking right now on mine, I'm going to put it bottom of B tier and just put things in front of it. We'll get back to it, but I definitely think it's better than Tough.
Yeah, I
definitely think it's better than Tough. All right. So we're moving on to Fellowship. Oh, by the way, hi, Enlighten. Let's see. Rebirth is definitely not S tier. Leave my chat. All right, Fellowship. I think this one's really good. I think you can. The obvious pairing would be with Thirsty, so you can it would be just like the old Thirsty, really, except better because you get 100% of the healing at 3 scrolls. And you can also pair it with another talent, Vampiric, which I don't think is that good, but when paired with Fellowship can be more than useless. So Fellowship I see a lot of potential in, because even without Thirsty, if you find a decent reset, you can literally have a designated potion guy and just have that spread out through your entire team. It saves so many resources. So I think it's going to be in my list above B, or above Vigor and B tier.
I'm man, it's crazy how our opinions vary. I think
that's why I wanted you on, because I knew you wouldn't agree.
Yeah, I mean, it's good. It's good because I feel like I'm gonna end up sounding like a. I'm just like repeating myself.
Yeah, feel it out.
I'm looking up for.
Yeah.
A part of me feels like this has the potential to turn into a talent that is almost a must-have in team play, and I don't know that that's going to be the case, but it has like S tier potential to me, and
yeah, you make a good point.
I'm gonna put it in S tier because I really like, a part of me almost like has this vision of a meta in squads where like one person, every single team has one person on Fellowship, and there's so many different ways you could do it. You could backline it on a Frostborn, backline it on a Conduit. You could put it on a Stone Shaper and have them, shockwaving for armor mid fight while also heal. Like there's so much potential with this talent that I think that I just want to sit it there and see what happens.
Okay, you know what? I didn't really take it into account. For some reason, I didn't think about squads. So I'll actually agree with you on that. I think it will be picked quite a bit just for that utility. Kind of like how, I mean, my love affair with Foresight. but yeah, I think it's in a similar spot. So I'm willing to meet you at S tier for now. I think as the list develops, I might move it down in mine. But
yeah, that's
right now,
something to think about. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I think we're in agreement there. Let's go ahead and move on to our first 4 cost, Athletic. I think we were discussing a little bit earlier how this is a very good pub stomping sort of talent. Now, in terms of like, will it be good when another player is in your lobby and you've exhausted its usefulness? I don't think it's all that good because it's 4 cost. Yeah, and that just limits so much.
Yeah, it's something. It's the cost throws me. It's like a chapter 1 ambi to me, where I'm looking at it and I'm like, man, I really wish that was just like 1 point cheaper. Yeah. If I'm taking the reins on this one, this is hitting a D tier for me. It's
really,
I don't. Here's the thing. So I know we kind of disagreed on it. I don't think it's useless, but I don't think we're gonna see Athletic at like high end competitive play almost ever. What I do envision is I envision people pub stomping with it. I envision people like farming ranked like BR, if that's a thing, with it. Because you really can take this and put it on probably like a couple classes and just abuse the lobby for a little bit. And it also just like, again, hypothetically speaking, if we have like BR solos with leagues, and depending on what the format it is for gaining points, this could end up being like super valuable, or at least like pretty good in lower ranks or just in lobbies that you really want to try to be super aggressive. So
yeah,
I don't think it's useless, which is what's protecting it from the F tier, but it's not great.
Yeah, I think it would be a decent low elo talent, but I also think it's going to be useless whenever we're talking about like the top teams, or if a good player wants to pick something, what they're going to pick to stop the lobby. Because in my opinion, there are a lot of classes that don't even require level 2 or level 3 to come online. Like the most immediate example would be Pyromancer. And then even then, I know that zones are being changed a little bit, but there are still going to be scenarios where you let that first zone come into effect and you're already level 2. So like at that point, you don't even need a body talent. So
yeah,
like unless you're running Toxicologist or Frostborn, or I'm trying to think of another class, maybe Tempest. Like I don't see this thing being used hardly at all.
Yeah, I mean, just a small hypothetical that I think we'll both agree on is like, do you ever see a competitive squad having anyone run this talent?
Hell no.
Like, why would they? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. So I think it's a cool, unique talent. I'm excited to see the progression for that talent throughout the course of the chapter.
Yeah. That being said, though, I think it's about even with tough. So I'm actually moving tough down to D where I originally had it. But I think tough is a little bit above it though for what it brings. The 25 armor late game is going to be better than absolute no value.
And just the fact that it's like way cheaper, so it's like it's not
that too. Yeah, it is a filler. Yeah, I mean it is a filler for a reason. So that's kind of where I'll keep it. I think I'll leave it in D. If my mind changes, I'll move it up. But we got plenty of time.
Yep.
All right, ambidextrous. Same D tier.
Really?
That's where I'm at. Yeah, it's 4 costs, but you do get the 1 skill, which if you see some of the changes coming to Frozen Alacrity, it looks like a buff, and everyone's going to be running Frost still, I think. I don't think they're going to be doing too much to the gauntlet itself, so I think in terms of that, and also the fact that you have Combust on Pyro, it still has somewhat of a purpose. So I think it's slightly above Athletic, but below Tough.
I think that Ambi has S tier potential, but I'm conservatively putting it. Yeah, I'm conservatively putting it in A tier. Like that's locked. I'm not going to put it in S tier.
Really?
But yeah, I actually think that like maybe a month from now, or like whenever we're like maybe a month into chapter 2, we might see a lot of people running it. And the reason I feel that way is because it still has potential, like with Spellslinger. That Spellslinger still in the game. It has potential to add multiple gauntlets and multiple, level 1 class skills. We just from Dan Ogle's redacted tweet, we know that most likely, I mean, it's like pretty much confirmed that Stone Skin is probably getting a buff. So I could see this potentially working with an offhand Stone Gauntlet, and this is the most important part for me that's really putting some potential behind Ambi for the first time, is the fact that there's no fervor in the game and spellcast speeds are changing baseline, and this could really open up the door for an offhand lightning, an offhand wind, where before 90% of the time if I wanted to play Ambi, it just felt like a waste because half the gauntlets couldn't even be used without fervor. And I'm looking at it thinking like, wow, people could actually add some wind running to their builds, and on top of that, they could also have Stone Skin with Spellslinger. Maybe they run offhand lightning in the pocket just for whenever they're playing competitive and they want to beam for a little bit more damage. Like I think there's a lot of potential with Ambi right now, and I'm excited to see if it lives up to my prediction.
I don't think it'll be anywhere near as relevant because it's 4 cost. You're sacrificing so much more builds than if you didn't run it and you had a build that you're really proficient at. Like say, for example, I see No Ace all the time in the current meta running Harmony and Fervor, and he really loves that Fire and Ice offhand, and there is almost no world where he'll run the current iteration of Ambidextrous. And I think at this point, like, I can see where you're coming from in terms of putting it higher tiered, but I don't see it coming from the skill line. I actually see it coming from the mana cost. So I think we're completely separate on that.
Yeah, I didn't even mention that too. It did get technically the mana cost reduction got what was it, a 10% buff?
Oh, it's more. It's 15.
Was it 15? Okay,
think,
cool.
Yeah. I mean, 35%. Yeah,
that's pretty solid for sure.
Oh wait, no, you're right. It's 10.
10. Okay,
I was reading old notes.
Yeah.
All right. So what I'll do here, I'm actually taking it out of my tier list. We'll argue about it later because I want to see where we place everything else and then compare, like, is it better than this? Is it better than this? So I think we'll do that. I think I'll do that for now. Let's see. Going on to Spirit Talents.
Cool.
Mystical. Max mana at 3 scrolls is 25. First of all, I think it's obviously worse than Ambi just because of percentage versus flat value, but I don't really see myself using this very much. Like personally, I can see a few builds using it, but I can't see it being a must grab, and it's really hard seeing it as a filler unless you absolutely have just that one point that wants to go into Spirit.
Yeah,
it's kind of like tough in that way, but I honestly think it's better than tough. I'm thinking it's around C, just because you have spells in the game that can cost a high amount of mana, like Frost, for example. I can see it being used in the early game to kind of pad out your mana a little bit to make sure that you can get more use out of maybe a common wind, a common lightning, and a common frost, especially since the mana drains all of your mana. But I don't really see it being used in the long run because the better players don't really spam all that much unless your name's Darkbreakers. So like, I don't know. I don't really see it being that useful. What do you think?
I'm interested to see what all builds it happens to be that perfect filler for, just because you have the extra point. Because that's pretty much what it's for. I think it's worse than tough, but I think that like right now my mind on the one cost is that they're just as fillers. Even if I compare them to each other, they're all just like solid choices. Like I was pretty pleased when they revealed the first two, like body and spirit. I was like, oh, those are solid, like those are cool. And then they revealed intelligent, and we'll talk about that in a bit, and I was like, wow, that's really good. So I think like right now my mind is just set on the thought that like I feel like the one costs are mostly A tier. So I'm for mystical and tough, I'm setting it in A tier.
Okay, I think you're taking cost into it a lot more than I am. I think that's where we're getting.
It's, I mean, probably so. It's kind of hard not to, because you have to like I can compare it like just straight to its literal like ability to give me something, to like something like Ambi, and like of course it's not going to be anywhere close to that, but it's also just something that like having mystical, or what is it called, mystical having mystical is it's just a free benefit, because in any scenario where you have the 1 point to spend, it's literally free. Like it's because you wanted something else, not because you wanted mystical. So I feel like it's just there. It's like, cool, like I could take that, like awesome, let me see what I do, just with that extra mana just to have. And you probably won't even notice that you have it, but it's there. I don't know.
See, that's what I'm kind of getting at too, is you won't even notice. Like, it's literally like that's what my mind is. It's like, for me, my methodical playstyle, and a lot of these top players that we see, like, they're not even going to notice it. It's just going to be it's going to be there and not really have any. It's not really going to have a footprint. So like, that's kind of where I'm attacking it from. I don't think it's...
I agree. Like I feel like that's how it's going to feel, but it's because it was in service to the full part of your build that you took it. Like I don't think anyone will ever look at the one cost and go like, oh yeah, I'm going to build around mystical, because that doesn't make sense. But it's like, if you really want, like for example, one of the builds that I've been looking at like in my mind has been Runic Dex Mystical. And it's not because I want mystical, it's because I want Runic Dex together. And so like in that build, for example, it's like, oh yeah, it's just free. Like I'm looking at it like it's just a solid one cost. Like it doesn't really have much of a footprint, but like I feel like they're all A tier just for the way that they're like able to be used, I guess.
Yeah, my whole thing is like, if you're going to use it as a filler, like it's not really that. We keep mentioning this, like you're not obviously not going to base a build around it, but like if you're running Runic Dex Mystical, that Runic Dex is what you want, just like you said. So like, would you even notice having mystical in your kit? You just said no. So like, why would you put it in A?
Because I don't feel like that devalues it. Like it's naturally going to be like, I guess it just depends on perspective, right? Because like I'm looking at it like it's solid because it's something that you're just going to get. And you're looking at it like it's like, oh well, it's one cost, it's got like even what it gives you is going to be obviously super super low value because it's so cheap, so naturally they're bad. But I don't know, I guess it depends on like how you're like looking at the tier list, because like for me, I'm looking at it like the higher up the tier list, it's good and will be used. The lower down the tier list, it's like bad and won't be used. It's kind of how like my perspective is coming from it.
Okay, let me clarify this then. I don't think it's a matter of will it be used like at all. I think it's more like, what kind of value does it bring to the table? That's kind of how I'm looking at everything. And maybe I should have clarified that before we started, because I see mystical 25 mana and I don't really see it as anything else. And like, yeah, the one cost allows it to be in certain builds, and there's certain talents that I see like popping off in certain builds. Like we'll get into it a little bit more as we get into the mind side of things. But and that'll be part of like our later discussion. But in terms of like putting things where they go, I'm looking at this more of like what value does this talent bring, kind of regardless of cost, and then I want the build discussion to then influence that part of it. So like think of it this way. How much value does 25 mana give you, or how much value does 25 armor give you? That's kind of how I'm looking at it.
I feel like if we go down that road, though, we're just going to have like a really top-end heavy tier list based on cost, and that's going to happen naturally because it's like, oh yeah, things that are higher cost are going to go higher, and things that are lower cost are going to go lower.
I mean, maybe that is what you
unless
do.
They're bad, because some of these are just bad.
Yeah, so that's what I did. Like me and you both did tier lists, I think, for chapter 1, and like and obviously. In the past, I had Runic S tier every single patch because it's, even though it's 2 costs, like it still was just that good. Like for right now, we have Fellowship sitting at S because I don't see a single squad not picking it. Yeah. So even though it's 3, it's going to rank higher than some 4 costs. And right now I'm looking
there's
at...
There's definitely going to be some outliers that feel that way. I think like if I was to change my perspective a little bit, I could probably pull Tough and Mystical down to B tier. But at that point, it almost feels trivial to me. Like... I don't know. It's weird. It's weird because it's hard for me not to want to keep them where they're at.
Okay.
Because the value that they bring is not value just in themselves, but also value in the overall build. It's so.
I mean,
hard
I definitely see it as a filler.
Yeah, it's so hard to separate the like the school of thought, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, this is all I see it as a filler.
Yeah.
So like. Obviously, if you're a filler talent, like maybe you're better than some other filler talents, but you're not gonna ever shape up to like Mystical's never gonna be close to Fellowship, for example, and it's in my mind it's never gonna be close to Dexterity. So like now I'm looking at kind of where I'm placing it, which for me is like below Vigor and B and above Tough and D tier. Like, is 50 health gonna be outweighing 25 mana? Let's answer that question first.
Yeah, but I feel like that's kind of a pointless question to answer because, like, of course it is because it costs more.
Okay, then we get into the other side. How much does cost factor into the value of a talent?
Huge. It's huge. Yeah, it's huge. It's like half of the discussion.
I don't really see it as half. I see it as like a third. Anyway, for right now, I'm gonna put it. I'll put it in B for now. How about that?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking about moving them down to B, but right now I have it sitting in A.
All right, for mine it'll be B, and I guess we'll just disagree on it, which is fine. Let's move on. Let's go to Vampiric. I have half a mind to put it in B as well. Because I'm just thinking of the okay, first of all, let me go over what it does. So the way that it works is a little bit weird, but it makes sense when you think about it. So 40% of the health damage that you do gets recovered to only your health, which means that if you are out of shield and you get damaged and then you shoot someone else that's out of shield, you get 40% of that health back of the damage that you do. There's no overhealing. There's no like your health, your life steal doesn't bleed into your shield value. It's literally just restoring your health. So I'm thinking half the battle, it doesn't matter. And like if you're reasonably ahead, like you should be, if you make good decisions and you position well, like there are some fights where you'll never lose your shield.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of tanks its value a little bit, or actually a lot now that I think about it. But like there are going to be those scenarios at the same time where you're having a really, really close 1v1 and that 40% could potentially save your life. But I think that's very situational, kind of like how Recklessness was.
Mm-hmm.
So as a 2 cost, since we're going to be weighing cost just a little bit more, I see it above Mystical in B tier, but I also see it below Vigor. What do you think?
I think that like it's another one of those talents that I really just need to like feel out when you have it on. It's definitely a gigantic safety net, and it's really, really hard not for me to relate it back to like the strong version of recovery. The difference was recovery was very passive, as where this is really active, but recovery was a gigantic free safety net. And,
free
and
is keyword.
Yeah, exactly. And this can't really hold a flame to that, although it does have some benefits. One, it's higher healing than current recovery, but that doesn't really matter. So it's a little bit higher healing than current recovery, but it's not over 6 seconds, meaning that like if you're damaged fast and they're damage trading and there's no fervor influence in the game, there could be potential where it's like the closest fight ever and you pull through because of Vampiric. So for me, I want to put it at B tier. I think it has A tier potential. It might have C tier potential though too. It's like, that's why I'm putting it B tier, because I just don't know if I think it's gonna like survive the test of time. But it could, to me, in my mind, I could eventually, like, it could be like, oh, if you don't have that, you can't stay alive type of talent. And I'm looking at that. I don't know if I think it's going to be like that, because that's what recovery was, and I don't think it's that good. But it's got some potential, so it's sitting in a B tier slot right now.
Yeah, and I actually agree wholeheartedly with that. Like, I have no problem placing it in B. I will end on a final note though, that for anyone thinking about taking Vampiric over some of the other talents, just keep in mind that if you damage a guy that has 100 health, you're getting 40 HP from it, and that may or may not be wasted. Also, if you're going to be damaging somebody with, say, 20 health, and you hit them with a 70 damage Ice Lance, you're only going to be healing off that 20 health, so you'll get 5 health as opposed to like 20 something. So just a side note for that.
The damage that resolves, not the damage that you hit.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So, but yeah, comfortable within B. I think Vigor is going to be, that's actually going to bleed into my Vigor argument as well. Like, regardless of what other 3-cost, 2-cost talents that you have above Vigor, Vigor provides 50 health at max, whereas Vampiric, if everything is going smoothly, which it should be if you're playing well, will only give you about 40 health. So, unless the guy's running Vigor, but that's a whole nother thing. Moving on to Thirsty, I think this, dude, I don't think you could ever. This is so funny. So they keep nerfing Thirsty. I just keep thinking it's gonna keep coming back. Like, I don't see this being bad in any way, because you still get 75%, which is better than 2 scrolls in the old patch, which even then was so good. So like, I don't see this. I think it's S. I really do. I think it's S. What do you think?
Yeah, it's pretty value town. It also has that potential.
Cost.
It's 2 costs, and like I don't know, man. It's hard not to put Thirsty in S tier, because as a solo, you can guarantee yourself better, more comfortable, and safe resets.
Yep.
And in team play, you can put it with Fellowship. You know what I mean? And it's just, it's a talent that got nerfed, but the cost stayed the same in a scenario where we have more point. It's just good, man. It's still just so good. It is the fact that it's so usable in different modes as well is like really enticing, and it's cheap. Like, it's cheap, so it's a solid S tier for me.
Yeah, and I mean, you already know my train of thought with cost. I don't think increasing cost is nerfing the problem very much, so I don't really cover cost that much, but it is a good point. It's 2 points. That's it. You can put it with just about any build you want, as long as you're happy with the body and mind talents. It's it's okay. In terms of that, it's one of the best filler talents in the game, and it's one that you can use it on anything. There's no situation where you don't find value out of the talent. Agreed.
It's really good.
Beautiful. S tier. I'm gonna put it below Fellowship if that order matters to you.
I think my like OCD is gonna kick in, and I'm like putting them in order from like cost and color. I literally can't help it. Like, that's just like how I have to do it.
All right. I'll try to keep it 100 on my side of things. We'll won't worry about the OCD on my side. Okay. Going into. All right. This is gonna be. I think this is gonna be meta defining, and that is Inspired. I think it's better than Focus Mana. That's my take on it, because you don't even need max mana. All you have to do is just not use your rune at the beginning of a fight, and you have so many shots that you can take with that increased damage mod. I think it's a bigger menace. Like, that's... I don't know how you talk me out of that, honestly, because, like, you can just use it repeatedly, and as long as you're positioned well, you don't even have to burn a rune. So, like, and this is going to get into our conduit discussion because you have overload. Holy moly. Okay, you know where I'm going with this. I'm thinking this is S tier easily. What do you think?
It's S tier easily. It's... when I saw that talent and they revealed it, I said that's probably going to be the best talent in the entire game. Like, it's manageable. Any good player can get value out of that, and not just get value out of it, they can get a lot of value out of it. It's and it only goes up to 20%, which, again, for the overarching discussion about damage mods in the game, that's good, but it's still solid. It's going to provide a lot of value. Yeah. We got someone bringing in mind that we don't know about classes yet. You're right, we don't, but I can still slap this on Pyromancer, and they're not touching that class. So yeah, we have to make some assumptions too when doing stuff like this. So it's like, like it definitely looks good with some classes. I mean, there's just no way of looking at it. I mean, it looks good.
Yeah.
I mean, are you here? Let me put it this way: are you ever using a rune in the middle of you charging an ice lance?
No. Well, nope. For one thing, I teach this is getting on a separate point, but everybody that I coach, I teach to, like, never use a rune unless you absolutely have to, unless it's sealing out an exile, unless it's quickly repositioning to where you can't afford to not do it. Like, you want to save your rune charges for the movement alone. Now you have another reason, and that's to exile your opponent faster. So, like, it's just... It benefits my train of thought a whole lot. This is how I play the game, and, like, for me, this is, like, the biggest godsend anyone could give me. So, yeah. Inspired costs 3 for anyone who doesn't know. It's 3 costs, which means that you can run Runic with it.
Yep.
Obviously, you can run Intelligent, which is coming up later. There's so many ways now in the Mind Tree to keep your rune charges up. So, like, even just the synergy with that, like, that alone is so good. And then you just give the value on top of it. It's beautiful. I almost thought about making a whole separate tier above S, saying, like, OP and
S plus, just inspired. It's definitely a talking point. I mean, it's one. I think, like, to make a decision like that, I need to wait. But it's definitely potential. Guess
what you can run with inspired?
What are you thinking?
Fellowship, if you need to. So you can have. I mean, you could. It doesn't have any synergy, but I mean, there's nothing blocking you from running that other S tier. So that kind of feeds into that kind of indirectly, I guess. Yeah, like if you want team healing, but you also don't want to, like, sacrifice any strength, then yeah. All right. There's definitely some subjectivity there. Yeah, there's a lot. That's subjectivity.com on me, but we're going to move on to Fortitude, which got buffed. It did get buffed. So previously I had Fortitude, I think, in my previous tier list at around B tier as a decent 2-cost filler. Now it's 3-cost, and for some reason, like, this is going to be the only talent that I really factor in how many scrolls you have, because there's a lot of times where in the beginning game, in the mid game, where you might not have full scrolls. And in this case, it's a big difference because you go from 1 scroll red at 50 seconds to 2 scrolls at 30 seconds, which is a huge jump. It's a lot bigger than it used to be. Isn't it 20? 20 cost is at 3 scrolls. Oh, God. I see what you're saying. You're saying. Yeah, sorry, I got lost in that. It is a pretty big jump. Yeah, so at 2 cost, you have Old Fortitude. Or I mean, at 2 scrolls, you have Old Fortitude. And then 3 scrolls... Now it's even more annoying. So I'm thinking it's a solid A tier as a 3-cost. Because it's like, before it was a solid filler, and in certain circumstances it can still be a filler, but this is kind of getting more into, like, what you want to run for the build as a whole. And I think that a shield in most circumstances, when you're at a long range, when you have so much burst potential on a lot of spells, and obviously Without Fervor, Wind and Lightning is going to take a hit, which is going to reduce the prevalence of that unless the class gets buffed. But they're also having compensation with some of the cast speed, which I don't see them bringing up to the original. So, like, I don't see the offhand versions of those being as prevalent. I'm seeing a lot of fire offhand. I'm seeing a lot of toxic offhand. I don't know if I see a whole lot of prevalence with wind like you used to. So I think this is going to indirectly drive the value of it up. And I think for that reason, it's going to be an A. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm a little torn on Fortitude, because it 100% got a buff, and it is, 20 seconds just a shield over and over and over again is really, really great. But I think what's holding it down the tier list for me is its competition and its cost. Like, it's competing against really, really good spirit talents that I think are much more instrumental to, like, taking into certain builds. And it's also either tied in cost, like in terms of inspired, or more expensive than thirsty. And so I'm looking at it and I'm like, wow, that's a really good talent, but I don't think it's like going to be used very much. It's one of those ones, like, this is one that I'm like ready to be wrong on, but I'm feeling like it's a C tier.
C tier, okay. Let me ask you this: do you think it's better or worse than Vampiric?
I don't know yet. It's so hard because I have Vampiric higher, but Vampiric is that, like, again, I said Vampiric could end up being A tier. It could stay where I have it at B tier, or it could be bad whenever I get my hands on it, and it could be C tier. So it's a tough one for me to compare it to Vampiric right now.
The way I'm looking at Fortitude is that I'm going to get so much more use out of a 20-second regenerating shield than I will if my fight ever goes to health. So, like, that's kind of where I'm approaching it from, if that helps with your train of thought at all.
Yeah, that's definitely, that could be true. But I also, like, my mind with Vampiric is that, like, it could end up being that talent. It's like, holy shit, like, if I don't have that, I can't guarantee that I'm going to win fights. I don't know if it is going to be like that. That's kind of what I'm thinking it could end up being like. Which, like, if I did, like, let's say I did another tier list, like, months from now, I would probably bump Vampiric, like, to S tier or A tier or something. But right now, I don't think it's as good.
Let me ask you this. Are you going to get hit?
Am I going to get hit? Yeah, always.
Like, if you're up against a Pyromancer, how many times is that fireball going to hit you?
Depends how good they are, but I'm going to get hit. Yeah, a lot.
Okay, so in my mind, this is like meta of the meta discussion, because, like, whenever I'm facing something like a Toxicologist or a Pyromancer, I know to make space, and I know to do all that, and if that person running that bursty option is running Vampiric, it doesn't get any value if they can't hit you. So, like, in that instance, I think that drives the Vampiric value down, but that's kind of getting back to the Vampiric thing. With Fortitude, I'm thinking it's an anti-fight opener. It's an anti-third party in some instances. And I see Vampiric being definitely below that in terms of value. So, like, I think we both agreed that Vampiric probably in B for right now.
Yeah.
Like, am I correct in that?
Yeah.
Okay. So in my brain, I'm thinking it's above Vampiric, but it's definitely below all our S tiers. In terms of, like, the utility it brings on a larger scale, and in BR, because we don't know what the new mode is. In the new mode, I bet this thing will be doo-doo. But I'm looking at Wellspring, I'm looking at Dexterity, and I'm thinking it's slightly below them, but not enough to put it in B tier.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of feel like it's going to end up being useless throughout the course of Chapter 2.
All right, well, I think you're wrong. I'm putting it in A.
Yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. That's a tough one.
All right. Fair enough. Moving on to Foresight. I want this talent to be so good. It is 4 costs. It has now been buffed to where without scrolls, it's the same. It's still 10 seconds. But now whenever you scale up, it really starts scaling again. This is one of those talents that got a huge buff at 2 scrolls red. where it went from 8 seconds enemies appearing on your minimap to now at 5 whenever it's 2 scrolls read. So it's 3-second gap. It's at 2 scrolls read, it's at its old value, and then whenever you read 3 scrolls, it's every 3 seconds, which in my opinion is so freaking huge. And even though it's 4 costs, there are certain builds that I see this being really, really prevalent on in squads. Other places, because it's 4 costs, I don't see that happening. But I think in cases where I think beforehand we had people running Foresight and taking games with it, like just using the macro play. And I think as the meta is going to develop, I think that this has the potential to do the same thing except on a larger scale. And I think that in terms of that, the ability to have all that information and to avoid dangerous situations, and avoid potential third parties and know where your team is rotating, and not even to mention getting the immediate position advantage with knowing where the future zone is and setting up on high ground. I think that this thing is hella valuable. I won't even call out the tier that I'm placing it in yet. I just want to hear your side of it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's I used to look at Foresight and say like, wow, this is an insanely good talent, but Fervor exists. And
it's gone now.
looking at its relative cost increase and looking at the buff that it got, I think that Foresight has S tier potential. I'll go on ahead and say where I'm going to put it. I'm going to put it in A tier because I think that's a conservative, safe place to put it, because it is expensive and it does force you to really think about the overall build right out of the gate when you decide to take this. This could end up being another one of those talents where it's like everyone, like some team or every team has someone running it, or a lot of teams have someone running it. Like, it definitely has that potential, and I think the buff like reinforces that. So I think conservatively, I couldn't imagine putting it below A tier. And if I was organizing A tier all particular, then it would be at the top, is the highest end of A tier for me.
I am in 100% agreement with you in A tier, and in the position that you called out.
Yeah.
And to go forward with all this, for the higher cost, well, really just for the 4 cost, I want us to start thinking about it in terms of, am I going to base my build around this talent for the 4 costs?
Yeah, I think you have to, right? Like that's what a 4 cost is. It is the build at that point, and then you shape around it.
Yeah, and then you just fill in. So in terms of basing your build around it, I think A is definitely conservative, but I, like you, could also see this rocketing into S tier, potentially being even more valuable than everything else, because it's like,
possibly, yeah.
Like, let me put it this way. It's like, it's literally being able to see the future and plan all the planning and the comms that go around that. And maybe this isn't like as valuable in like solo queue or something when you don't have a 3-stack, but like you're playing Spellbreak, you're going to have a 3-stack. So like, in terms of that and comms and like knowing where everybody is and like knowing where the future zone is and setting up and getting all your damage dealers ready to go, like, holy moly, this thing can get out of hand. But yeah, conservative A, because I don't know.
Same, yeah.
All right. Yes, there are about to be so many good builds, J Rose. I agree. Let's see. Sorry if this is going to bleed into your stream time.
Oh, no, we're cool.
I'll like barely
start when we're done.
All right, sounds good. Okay. That being said, what we just talked about, basing our builds around everything, Gilded is a 4 cost, and I think that it is so bad. What do you think?
It's F tier.
Yeah, it's F tier. Hell yeah, it's F tier. Get it out of here.
It's terrible. Will probably never be used, and if you do, it'll be me in a video.
Exactly. And you're just gonna run Gilded because you're not gonna run it. You're not gonna run it anyway. Don't even run anything with it. Okay. I want to see a meme. Basically.
It is a meme.
By the way, I see so many. You talked on your podcast earlier about how many brainlets there are on Reddit. And a lot of people think that this means that you can upgrade your squad's gear. It does not. You upgrade your own gear, and then you can't drop it from there.
That would maybe make it a B tier or a C tier if it could do that, but it doesn't. So
Yeah. Also, if you're losing because someone has a higher rarity, like unless you just can't find anything better than a common, then you have other problems to worry about. So Gilded is F tier.
Oh man, I love that you said that. That's so beautiful.
Dude,
so perfect. Yeah, it's true. You don't need to worry about your gear in this game.
You can kill anybody with a common frost if you outplay them. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to... I'm still keeping ambidextrous out of the discussion because I want to place it in comparison to everything else. But moving on to mind talents. Intelligent is such a good one cost.
Yeah.
It is, in my opinion, the best one cost in the game. And also, in my opinion, one of the biggest bang for your buck that you're going to get in terms of filler talent.
Yeah,
like
it's an S tier.
25%.
It's an S tier.
Ooh, you think S?
Yeah, it's hard not to put that one S tier because, like I said, I've been approaching the one cost from just like how good they all are. But if you compare them, it's the best one out of all of them, hands easily, and not even close. It's insane. It's really really good.
I agree with you. I agree. I'm putting it in A though.
Oh, okay.
I think in terms of now, I'm thinking of like in terms of value compared to cost. I think. Thirsty is better in that regard. I think Inspired is better in that regard. And I think they're better in terms of like, they're semi what you're going to base your build around. Whereas Intelligent, maybe you do, but I don't think it's as certain.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my train of thought for putting it in A for now. But we're kind of close, so I don't really feel bad about that one.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I get that.
All right.
It's a good feel.
Yeah. But dude, if you have a mind talent to fill, pass up those other two costs. You're going to pick the one cost Intelligent. That's my view.
I already have builds planned out where it's 6 costs because Intelligence just better. Like literally, like I've already done that. It's in my latest video. I have a build that's a 6 cost because of that reason right there.
Yep. And on that note, we're getting into the 2 costs. Spellslinger. Yep. Let's just go ahead and just cover Spellsinger. So you can place extra gauntlets and runes in your inventory. It is the only reason you have rune swap conduit in the current meta. Its sorcery cooldown got buffed pretty much 5% across all the important milestones, and got its cost increased because we have 7 total talent points. Spellslinger, in my opinion, has always been B tier, and I think it'll still be B tier.
Yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with that too. I think that like Spellslinger has mostly been a fun talent.
T-Fal's like S tier.
It's funny because it's mostly been like a fun talent to me. I think that could really change. Again, this is still going to tie into my thought on Ambi potentially being good. So it could go up, or it could probably stay a B tier and just like be something cool and fun to use. Like I said, there will be builds where this gets passed over just because Intelligent is better. And so for me, I have it sitting B tier. I think that's pretty comfortable for it for now.
I think so too. I think in terms of like probably what T-Fal's thinking, Conduit main, it's great on Conduit, but is it better on any other build? Like, it's like so specific to one class, and I don't think that's enough to propel it higher than B.
It could be good on Tempest because it's always kind of good on Tempest, but I don't think Tempests are gonna play that as the main build or anything. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of what I see now in Tempest, like usually they're picking either Fire or Frost. I don't see a whole lot of people like picking Spellslinger over anything else, like in terms of runic fluency, for example, in the current meta. And like in terms of that, like Spellslinger didn't really change all that much. Like 5%, okay, it's cool, it's a buff, but like, is it really going to do anything? Probably not. So
yeah, not really, not much of a change.
Yeah. So I kind of think it's towards the top of B tier. I think it's definitely ahead of Vampiric and potentially ahead of Vigor. But yeah, that's kind of my train of thought. All right, Curious. In my opinion, well, first of all, let me just get the description. Chance to find extra scroll at 3. Well, I won't lie to you. If you don't have 2 scrolls read up in the mind talent slot, then it's kind of bad. But once you start getting into 2 scroll territory, you're able to find an extra scroll at 35% of the time, and then at a full mind scroll stacking, you have 50% of a chance to find extra scroll. Your scroll reading speed is doubled, and this applies to not only chests but also to exiles. So
and to like mana vaults and stuff as well.
Everything you can get loot, everywhere you can get loot, that's where it applies, except for the shrines. So in that way of thinking, I think it's going to be decent in terms of like support builds. Like, for example, one build that I was thinking, if you wanted somebody to go full support, you potentially could do Thirsty, Fellowship, and Curious. Like, if you really want to typecast them that way. I don't think that's a build that's really going to prevail. But in terms of like what Curious brings to the table for a squad, I think it's decent. But I don't think it's better than something like Spellslinger, for example.
Yeah, I don't know. It kind of like lends itself to my same thoughts about Finders Keepers. I just like don't see a ton of value in it. It can be used, and it's not the worst thing in the world, but I just doubt we'll see a ton of it. I don't know. For me, I'm putting it D tier. I don't think we're gonna see a ton of Curious. There's some opportunity for it, and it'll probably end up climbing its way up higher, especially in team play. But I don't know. It's just one of those things. It's there. It's a talent.
All right. On my list, I have Athletic in D tier, so I'm putting it in C because I think it's better than Athletic.
Fair. Yeah.
Also, an important note, because previously I had Finders Keepers in B tier in Chapter 1, it doesn't spawn extra potions from chests anymore. So that's kind of a bummer. So now you have less resources. So that's another reason why it's a lower tier for anyone who's seen my tier list. C is for Curious. Someone called it out in chat. Thanks, Jay. Let's see. We on to 3 cost. I'm going to cover Hardened first. You're immune to your least favorite debuffs, Krashy, Ignition, and Corrosion. Let's give a round of applause to the devs for that one. Okay.
Yeah.
And then weirder news, your freeze and shock duration is lowered by a percentage, but never does it reach immunity. So at your first, at no scrolls, it's 35%, at 1 scroll 50, 75%, and then 90%, which means basically, I know the shock duration is like 2.5 seconds, so you're getting shocked for 0.25. It's great for an interrupt. I don't see this part of it being useful that much, but there still is that like that little window opportunity where if you're charging a Frost Lance, for example, or an Ice Lance, it can interrupt your casting, but like that's all it does because it's a 0.25. So in that aspect, like it's pretty useful. Like you're never gonna feel like you're trapped unless you're in Flash Freeze or Ice Mist, because then you're just slowed and you can't really do much. But at the same time, you have CC immunity after you get out of freeze, so I see it being pretty good, honestly.
Yeah, I think it'll be good. It's a bit expensive, and naturally, I have to like wish it was Harmony to some degree. But it brings something new to the table, and to be completely honest, Harmony's like complete immunity to CC was a little wild. So I don't know. To me, it has like A tier potential, but I'm comfortable putting it B.
I think it's. I'm gonna tell you what I have. What I have in B right now. I have on my list. I have Spellslinger. I have Vigor. I have Vampiric, and I have Mystical, all in B. I think that it brings more to the table than any of those in terms of defense. So I'm thinking kind of mid or bottom of A. I think Dexterity is going to be better than it. I think Wellspring is going to be better than it. I potentially think Fortitude is going to be better than it, but it might be better than Fortitude in my mind.
It's funny, my entire B tier are talents that I'm actually pretty unsure of if they're going to be really, really good or kind of bad. So it's like my B
that's kind of what we have to go with, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. My B tier is literally like a bench. It's just like they're sitting there, and I'm going to wait and see what I think about them. But it's like, that's what I said. I think my B tier is my conservative slot. Like, I don't really know where to put these, so I'm gonna put them B tier because I think they obviously have value, or at least Hardened, if I'm being specific to that talent, has some really good value. I think it's going to be good. I just don't know how good.
Yeah. Oh, that's sad. I had to I time out somebody because they said sub to them. Oof. Yeah, I think it's going to be better than the bench, though, on mine. I'm going to put it in A. And like I said earlier, we'll have another discussion about builds as a whole and kind of move some of these around. Because right now my C tier is kind of empty, except for Curious. So we'll kind of get into that later. But moving on to another thing that I'm thinking about putting in C tier, tracking. My poor tracking did get a... Let me see. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, dude. Did tracking get a buff or a nerf?
It got a pretty fat buff. It's like
okay.
Almost double.
Okay,
it's almost double the duration on it at max scrolls.
All right, dude. My brain just farted for a second. Like I completely read the opposite of English. 4-second buff at 3 costs, or I mean at 3 scrolls. So 10 seconds total at 3 scrolls. 7 seconds at 2 scrolls is still better than what it used to be at 3. Mm-hmm. So yeah, fat buff. You're right. I don't know if I see a whole lot of tracking, honestly. I feel like I mentioned this to someone earlier. I think I mentioned it to play safe. I think tracking is training wheels for bad comms. That's kind of where I'm at with it, at least in the current iteration. I don't know how much of a difference 10 seconds is gonna make. Maybe you catch someone trying to reset, but at the same time, I'm thinking, what are you gonna pick, or what are you not gonna pick over tracking that I can place it above? Like, would you sacrifice Spellslinger for it? Would you sacrifice Curious for it? It's kind of my train of thought, and I don't really know what I want to do with it. I think it's worse than Hardened, but I'm kind of in the middle of everything as far as everything else goes.
Yeah, I have a pretty... this is one of the talents that I'm actually going to be super ambitious with. It's another one of those talents that I think could just end up being really, really good. If I wanted to be conservative with this one, I would just throw it into B tier again. But I actually think that I am looking forward to running it, and I think it's going to be good and like super helpful. I think Toxicologist is still going to be like really, really strong in the meta, and I think that this is one way that was never fully actualized as a good opportunity to counter them, but now it might be. And that's just one scenario. I mean, I still think it can bring value in team play. I'm looking at it at an A tier. It doesn't have much room to go higher. It could end up like kicking itself down whenever I realize like how good other talents are and what the total builds are. But it looks pretty solid to me. It looks really, really good to me.
I think there's a specific way you have to run it. Like you have to. It's kind of like Spellsinger for me. It almost has to be a conduit or someone who's good at tagging somebody with something. Mm-hmm. So I see where you're thinking of with Toxicologist. However, I don't think that they're going to ignore the weirdness of the Toxic Gauntlet being long range, so I think that's going to come out of the discussion. Mm-hmm. I see this potentially being run on Tempests, just due to the fact that our next talent is so high a cost, just because you can wind shear somebody and then have an immediate area of where they are, and wind shears kind of go a long way, but obviously not as long as lightning.
Yeah, they go pretty far though.
Yeah, so I'm kind of in the same boat around Spellslinger with it, kind of. Like I don't think it's as good as Spellsinger, but I'm with you where it has potential to be better. Mm-hmm. I just don't know if I would pick it over other mind talents that are higher up on my list. That's the only thing that's barring it for me.
Yeah, it definitely is an investment at 3.
Yeah, I'm gonna put it below Spell on mine. And I think it's going to be above Vigor just because it's one of those information talents, mm-hmm. like kind of like Foresight. So it's like, could it potentially be amazing? Yeah, but I don't think we're there yet.
All right, which 4 cost is next?
I'm gonna save the best for last. So let's go over a Rebirth. That's F tier, easy.
Yeah, don't even
easy
have to
clap.
talk about it.
Nope. Runic Fluency. 4 costs. You get an extra rune charge. You get part of the rune cooldown that inspiration gives. Cost is from 2 to 4. On the face of it, this talent didn't go anywhere. I think it's still S tier. I think you can still base builds around it. Its cost does hinder it, but at the same time you have inspiration, which is its biggest benefit in terms of build synergy. So I still think it's S.
I have it at A tier. I think the thing that's holding it from S tier to me is that I think it's hard for me to put 4 costs at S tier because it pulls the rest of them like down a bit. Like I don't know. They're just so hard to budget around because you have to. The whole build becomes that, and that might end up being S tier. Like it's easy that it could sit in that spot.
Toxicologist Krashy.
Dude, it is.
May activate the PTSD.
Well, the thing is like there are some classes that I think like will probably never not run this. Like I have a hard time imagining Tempest isn't going to run Runic because it's all about movement, and honestly, that extra dash charge for them is so huge. For such a mobile class, and that they want to keep that theme for them. I think with Toxicologist, it's going to be hard for me to see them not running at least Intelligent or Runic. Like, there's no way. They're running one of those two, and it is high value because it's not just an extra rune charge and rune cooldown, right? Like it's positioning to do damage, it's positioning to avoid damage, it's positioning, it's like movement to run. Like it's everything. It's very multifaceted. So there's no way it's not A plus. I think for now, just because it's a 4 cost, it's holding itself at A for me. But like now that I'm seeing my, just about my full tier list completed, I feel like I'm seeing a really good balance with at least like what my mind is on the talents. But yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with putting it in A tier.
I'm gonna put it at the bottom of S for right now, just because of the cost. I think that if it were a 3 cost, it'd easily be near inspired in terms of that ordering. But I definitely think it's S tier value. Even with the 4 cost, you can still base things around it. And like I said earlier, inspired goes along with it, like almost like hand in glove. So I can't ignore that either.
Yeah, that's gonna be a good build. Also, I mean, there's yeah. All
right.
I was gonna take the discussion in a long direction, so I decided not to. But yeah, it's really
okay.
Good.
All right. I still have ambidextrous unranked, so let me try to figure this one out, okay? Because it is one of those. I see it mainly as a gimmick, and I'm one of those people that thought that this talent in chapter 1 was gonna define everything, and obviously it ended up doing that. I think in terms of our class skills, unless we see something drastic, that it's still going to be. Hold on, let me hide this user from my channel. Thanks. Okay, great. I think ambidextrous. I still feel like it's a gimmick almost. I think I had ambidextrous at around B or C tier on my old list. And other than the mana cost buff that it got, which is substantial, like I think you could. For me, it's all about wind offhand. It's all about frost offhand. That's kind of where I see this thing really shining, because if I remember correctly in Dan's notes, we're supposed to be getting a Frostborn Frozen Alacrity buff. That's what it looked like. And in terms of wind shears, we have that cast speed compensation coming in a little bit, and that's going to help you with your wind jumps if you choose to use it that way. So like it can be very useful, and then you also have the argument for fire offhand, and then you have to factor in that it's also a 4 cost. And that I see it as a gimmick, whereas you might not. So can you like give me your points so I can figure this one out?
I feel like it was a gimmick in chapter 1 for me, and like that it held itself in that position of being only a fun talent because a lot of the offhands you would want to run with it, and because the general meta was so centered around fervor. But now that fervor's gone, I feel like it opens the door for it. It got buffed. It's a relative cost increase from 3 to 4, which basically means that it's just a net buff across the board. And I think that the door is more open now to actually run it and to actually like have a good reason to run it with the realization that we're probably going to get a couple of level 1 buffs and potential nerfs. We'll have to wait and see. Like on paper, if potential energy doesn't get nerfed, it's great with potential energy because I'm assuming a spell cost speed is going to go up for lightning. Same thing with wind. I would never run Ambi with wind before because it forced you to run fervor with it, and so it really tightened the builds down. But now you don't need fervor, so there's good potential there. If an alacrity buff happens, there's potential with it for there. If a stone skin buff happens, there's potential for it there. Like I think that Ambi is gonna see play in my mind. I just don't know how much play. It could be a lot, or it could be just a formidable amount, but I think it's going to be really, really good.
The way I'm thinking about it, is there ever a world where I'm gonna base my build around ambidextrous? Is there a world where you do that?
Yeah, I think there will be really strong builds that are Spellslinger Ambi focused for multiple classes.
Spellslinger, Ambi, and Mystical, I would imagine.
Yeah, no other choice really there.
I wonder.
That's a mana build, and it's a swapping build. Like there's some inherent damage potential. Yeah, there's a lot of potential for that specific build to me.
Okay.
For a couple classes, like I said, I think that build could be really good on Pyro. I think it could be really good on Conduit, on Tempest. Like it's going to get really interesting to see where Ambi goes.
All right. I don't see myself really ever running it competitively in comparison to other things. Like if I were to hop into scrims, for example, I don't think I would ever bring out an Ambi build for one thing. But if you are going to run Ambi, you can have intelligence and thirsty with it.
Yeah,
you can have.
That's good.
I think that one and the other one that we mentioned are the only two builds you're really gonna run. Between that one and Spellslinger and Mystical. And so in terms of that, you kind of have two options. Okay, I think I've made up my mind. I think that's what I'm gonna do. I think it's, in terms of cost, I think it's incredibly costly to be able to make your build around it. And you're only left with those other options. You could potentially run an Ambi inspired build, but that's a little difficult in some circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
You could potentially run a Conduit Ambi inspired build because you have the overload. And just not run a mind talent. That is a possibility. And that might be pretty good depending on what you're doing. I don't know why this one is so tough for me.
Yeah.
In my mind, I can't see it coming out of B, or I can't. That's like, in my mind, that's where it belongs. Because like I think it's better than C, but I don't think it's as good as the ones I put in A. Like I think I'm comfortable with B, but I'm open to being proven wrong. And I think for right now, I'm gonna put it below Spellslinger, but above tracking in mine. And I think I'm gonna move Vampiric down to C and Mystical down to C, with the order of that being Mystical head of C tier, Vampiric in the middle, and Curious at the very bottom of C. I think that's what I'm going to end up with.
Yeah, this has been an experience. There's so many talents.
This Ambi experience is... This one throws me for a loop. Anyone watching in chat, like, run this in a scrim and prove me wrong, please, because I'm going to be probably casting it, and I want to see it develop. Please do it. Change my mind. And actually change my mind, not the meme. Okay, so one last little glance over. S tier. What do you have in it?
I have Intelligence, Fellowship, Thirsty, and Inspired.
Okay. I think Inspired, Fellowship, and Thirsty are good for me.
Mm-hmm.
I think we had a decent case for Runic Fluency and S on mine, and for yours, I think A is fine.
Yeah.
Intelligence, obviously you're using the fact that it's the best filler talent for being S.
Yeah.
And I have it in A, so that's, I mean, we're pretty much.
Yeah, it's like, it's pretty much an agreement. It's just like a slight deviation.
Yeah. A tier, I have Foresight, Intelligence, Dexterity, Wellspring, Fortitude, and Hardened in that order. What do you have?
So my order again, sorry, my orders don't matter, but
Okay, sorry.
my A tier is kind of like telling a story about how I'm feeling about the overall balance of the chapter with talents. So
Okay.
A tier is my biggest one, and it has tracking, runic, tough, dexterity, wellspring, ambi, mystical, and foresight. And these are it's a lot because that's where I think a lot of the talents are. I just think they're all so good. Like they're all going to bring a lot of builds to the table, and there's a lot going on in my A tier.
Okay. The biggest one that stood out to me is tough. We still need to discuss that one then, because I have that one in D on mine.
Yeah,
I don't think it's that good at all.
I can't imagine. I can't imagine tough being considered anything lower than B tier.
Okay. I already know why it's in D tier for me, and that's because corrosion makes it not matter. But let me go over some of the builds that you see it being run with, because I know it's a filler talent, and in terms of that, the placement doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
But what kind of builds do you see yourself running with it?
Runic, tough, and thirsty.
Anything else?
That's one I could come up with off the top of my head.
Okay.
Let's see.
I'm trying to think. Maybe Hardened. Hardened makes it a lot better, in my mind, because you get rid of the corrosion thing, which is what I'm basing my thing off of. So let's see. By itself, I still think it's D, or maybe low C if you were to convince me. But with Hardened, 3 cost, 1, so you could run Hardened, tough, makes 4. And you can run Inspired on top of that. You could run Vampiric, which isn't that great. You could run Fortitude. You could run Thirsty. So there are some options there, I guess. I don't see it not being paired. Like, if you're gonna pick tough, I think you have to pick Hardened. Unless you just have nothing else. That's kind of where I'm going with it.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, because like I'm looking, so I think like the build that probably stands out the most to me is the one that I said, like runic, tough, thirsty, because Thirsty's just like hardcore value town, and runic is runic, and
2 S tiers on mine.
Yeah, I can see someone wanting thirsty so bad and someone wanting runic so bad that they take tough. Like I can actually, like, I think there's going to be plenty of variation for sure, but I could see that becoming one of the S tier toxicologist builds, and maybe even more than toxicologist. Like you have like the invis, and you want that thirsty so you can use part of it while you're invis, and it's going to like pull a lot of value out of that. You have runic just because, again, runic is insane, and runic on tox is insane, and then tough is just like free. I think that's probably the build that stands out the most for it.
I still see tough as just being a filler. Like the 25 armor at max is okay. It's not that okay, but it's like okay. Let me go over some other points here for tough. Let's see. Here's what I want to know. Do you spawn in with that 10 extra armor?
You do. Yeah, they said that. Like, you don't have to fill it. It literally is like you're spawning in with it.
Okay. I've moved it up to C tier then.
Yeah.
Let's see. Is it better than Curious? Is it better than Vampiric? Is it better than Mystical? That's the argument now.
Is it better than Vampiric? Those are just so hard to compare to me.
Yeah, I mean, the only way that you could say it is better in my mind is that tough is up 100% of the time and Vampiric is situational. But also, neither of them should matter if you're playing the game right.
I mean, I don't know if that's fair to say. That's hard for me to agree with. Because, like, there's going to be situations where you just have a really, really tough close fight. And, like, having a 25 extra armor and having the potential to trade because you have Vampiric could literally be the difference. Like, I can see, like, 2 pro players or, like, really, really high tier players going like, oh damn, he won that fight because he had Vampiric. And not necessarily tough, but like if you were running a tough Vampiric build, then like you could have that perspective. Like I think that those two talents could actually go really, really well together with Runic as well, just depending on how good Vampiric ends up being.
I don't think I'm convinced with that. All right. I think I've made up my mind with it being in C on mine. I just don't see myself agreeing with it.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think that's just an agree to disagree type of thing.
Yeah.
On a side note, though, if you position tough in such a way, like I have on my list, its arm kind of goes down and looks like it's the one holding the scroll.
Oh,
for curious.
Hold on, let me pull it up.
This is the new canon.
That's funny. Yeah, I like that. No, wait, you should put it. I was gonna say maybe put it above in B tier just to see if it. Okay, you held it up. And that's good. That was good.
Nah, the angle's not good. Damn.
I was like, when you picked it up and floated it, that looked good. I liked that.
And just shrink. We're gonna make a whole person. We're just gonna put all these talents together and make people. Okay, one talent. I almost want you to convince me to put in B tier.
Okay.
It's Wellspring.
So Wellspring, you want me to convince you to put it in B tier? Where do you have it right now? A?
I think I have it in A, but I don't know if I want to.
Why would I convince you to put it lower than what I have in? I have it at A too. I think it's good. I think it's
good too.
I think it's really good.
I'm kind of iffy on that one, honestly.
So I'm excited to see how good Wellspring Inspired ends up coming out to be, like full on damage build. Because I can't tell if that's going to be really, really good, and that could end up being meta, like everybody still just runs damage, or it could end up being like really good, but still has like a formidable fight against some of these other builds that give you information or give you tankiness, that give you supportiness. Either way, I really can't look at Wellspring and think like, oh yeah, that's not going to be good. Like it's pretty good. It's going to be good.
Yeah, I think it's the ultimate preparation talent. Like you levitate before the fight, then take it with the 20% extra, and then you basically have that the whole rest of it. You can spam at that point and still have it up. Like
there's so many, like, you know how like people will like sorcery cancel in a tree to like buy themselves some time. Like you could just mana bar yourself out in the tree, you know what I mean? Like burn your mana bar. You bought yourself some cover, at least a little bit. It's not they can't hit you, but you bought yourself some time with a little bit of cover. You burn out your mana bar, you touch the ground, and boom, you start bursting. Like it's there's so much potential for Wellspring. I'm really, really excited about Wellspring.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I mean, I kind of agree with my younger self then at that point. Someone's asking me why I have Hardened in anything other than D, and that's just gross. I think Hardened, it's hard for me to know. Come on, man. Come on.
Fall, but it's not D tier. It's really good.
No,
like, it's still
Krashy. Krashy, dude. Come on.
Oh. My bad.
Oh my god.
My bad, dude. I'm sorry.
Just lost some points from me on that one. Sorry, dude. Everybody unsub to Krashy. All of you who did it for my streams.
I need to take a lap. I didn't get it.
Dislikes on every video.
Okay. All right. And that just happened.
It'll drive up your engagement. All right.
Yeah.
Everything else I'm pretty confident with. I have Spellslinger, Ambi, Tracking, and Vigor all in B tier. I have Mystical, Vampiric, Curious, and Tough in C. I have Athletic in D, and then we all know it's an F. So, yeah, I think I'm pretty good with this one.
Yeah, I have. Look, I'm excited to look back on this in time because I'll put it this way: there's no way my tier list stays exactly where it's at. Like that's 100% facts. Like it's not going to stay the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna name this Spellbreak Talents Chapter 2. Oh, what the hell? No, come back. Close me out of that window.
Oh.
All right, download image, save. All right, Krashy, I think that's gonna be.
Yep.
I think that's gonna be the end of it, honestly.
That was fun.
It was a really good discussion. We went
it
about
it made me think a lot, for sure.
Yeah, I think I Yeah, I could definitely see these being brought up in scrims, for example, and like anyone who's not doing scrims watching, get in there first of all, and second, try running these in your games. Tell me how it goes.